Welcome to the ID10T podcast number 1076. Let's immediately jump in and talk about the corkboard. Events at ID10T.com is how you can get your thing mentioned on the ID10T community corkboard. Like Frankie, who writes, "Hey, Chris and crew, first of all, I want to thank you for having Yvette Nicole Brown on your podcast. It was great to hear her perspective. She is an amazing person." Yes, I agree with you 1,000%. When you put the call out for creators at the end of that podcast, I was grateful. There's a board game being produced right now that needs more attention brought to it. The game is Factions Battlegrounds. It was created by Jason Creighton and Peter Ferry. They created this game when they were in 5th grade, but have recently rebuilt the world to be more inclusive and diverse. They didn't just stop at their world building because they've hired an equally diverse group of artists to bring this world to life. You can find it on Instagram. The account is Factions Battlegrounds, or you can go to factionsbattlegrounds.com. Thank you for your time and for reaching to bring awareness to creators that might not have the chance otherwise. Frankie, thank you so much for writing in, and I did check this out, and it does look amazing. In fact, I signed up for the email list, so hopefully I'll get updates as to when it's available, and I will let everyone in the ID10T community know as well. Thanks again, events at ID10T.com, to promote your thing or thing that you are excited about. Let us know. This episode is Diallo Riddle, who is an incredible artist. I mean, he's an Emmy-nominated writer and an actor and a musician and a DJ and a producer and a showrunner. He was on the show Marlon. He was on the show Rise, but he also wrote for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon for a long time. He co-created Slow Jam the News, which I'm sure you've seen, and he and his writing partner, Bashir Salahuddin, have created this amazing show called Southside on Comedy Central, while simultaneously they created a musical variety sketch comedy show called Sherman's Showcase, which was on IFC, and now that has been absorbed by AMC as well. So it runs on IFC and AMC. And if that's not enough, he also, on the music side, helped put together the music with Edgar Wright for Baby Driver. So he just literally does everything. Incredibly talented, super nice guy. And he and his writing partner, Bashir, are legit comedy geniuses. So they've already made amazing stuff now, and I am just so excited to see what amazing huge things that they're going to create in the future. So it was a real pleasure to have him on. And their first show, Southside, you can and should watch, is on Comedy Central. And Comedy Central has put those episodes up on the internet as well. And Sherman's Showcase, Black History Month Spectacular Special, Friday, June 19th. Sherman Showcase Marathon on IFC begins at 4 p.m. Pacific, and then the special airs at 8 p.m. Pacific. Meanwhile, the special airs on AMC at 7 p.m. Pacific. So there you go. It's you actually could watch the special on AMC at 7 and then jump back over and see it on IFC at 8. So there you go. Congratulations to Bashir and Diallo for 2 fantastic shows running simultaneously that are both going to make more episodes. So here's the ID10T number 1076 with Diallo Riddle.
Initiating ID10T protocol.
I love your wallpaper, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's this kind of like weird steampunk wallpaper that my wife found, and she had extra of it, and so this I'm actually
I like she had extra wallpaper.
extra wallpaper. My wife is like wallpaper, like queen of wallpaper. Like she finds the best wallpapers, and this is actually the podcast room that we normally podcast out of. But I'm just in here now, and we're doing it on a computer because, hey, coronavirus and stuff. Yeah.
I told Jimmy what you said about how, like, because he was talking about how he does the show now, and he's like, we're all learning this stuff. And I was like, I was talking to Chris Hardwick the other day. He was like, yeah, we finally caught up to what YouTubers have been doing for the last 15 years.
yeah, I know. And then but patting ourselves on the back like it's a great sacrifice. Guys, I am broadcasting from, get this, my dining room. Whoa, wow, what a broadcast. Like the YouTubers are like, fuck you, man.
Yeah,
You've been doing this since 2005.
You've been doing it with less than you have in your pocket right now.
Yeah. So, they've been, when this started to go down, I was like, man, YouTubers they blazed this trail. This is ground that they seeded all these years.
Did you ever hear, and I don't know if we're wasting good banter, but did you ever hear the story about, I forget if it was Ben Affleck or Matt Damon, but back when they were doing Project Greenlight, I think it was Ben, actually. I heard him speak one time, and he was like, I look back at Project Greenlight with a lot of regret, and not for the reasons that you're probably thinking, Shia LaBeouf. He was like, I literally went back and I looked at some notes that we were taking back in the time, and we had all these ideas about how we would have people deliver their short films to us. And he said that, at the time they were working really hard on people being able to upload their movies to, a server so that they could actually watch them without them having to send in a VHS tape. And he's like, so basically, in our interest of making tons of money in Hollywood, which we never made on any of the films that we ever did at Project Greenlight, he was like, but if we had ever cracked the code on uploading videos straight from your laptop, we could have invented YouTube, and we wouldn't have to be these clowns in these clown suits still trying to make funny, stupid movies. He was like, we could have just solved all our problems by inventing YouTube.
Well, it's hard to remember that there was a time. I mean, it's kind of funny to have old man computer talk. Like in my day, you uploaded a video the size of a postage stamp. But, you look at the guys, you look at the Rooster Teeth guys who have been doing it since they had to upload, I think maybe QuickTime videos. And then there was a time where you had to host the video. So you had to pay for the traffic, you had to pay for the bandwidth. If your video got downloaded a bunch, you had to pay for that.
You're like, guys, stop watching the video, please. This is killing me.
Please watch this, but don't watch this.
Just don't watch it, enjoy it, but don't tell your friends, please.
Please don't pass this around. I cannot afford for you to pass this around.
Guys, it's not like VHS, okay? It's a different model.
It isn't. Yeah, we haven't invented the word monetize yet. We don't know what that means. So we're still. I lost all that money on Pets.com in 2000. So.
I still think that's the best mascot that just didn't get a chance. It's such a cool mascot. But I'm a sucker for a puppet, so there you go.
But I mean, that mascot is probably available on eBay somewhere. You could probably get that mascot.
You probably get the original, yeah.
You probably get I guarantee you, no one, and probably not for much. You know what I mean?
Sadly.
You probably could find that. You probably could find that somewhere. Do you think I always say there's no excuse for creators now to not make whatever they want because we have all these resources at our feet that we didn't have. You're just a few years younger than I am, but do you remember the pre-social media video upload era and the post era. Would you have preferred to grow up now, or do you like kind of having the analog background that you grew up in?
Man, I bought these turntables I applied for a credit card and bought these turntables in 1996. It was the first time, I was a college freshman and I was like, hey, I really want to do this. And
the freshman credit card. Freshman
credit card. And by the way, I was paying off this $1,000 that I was paying that off for years. I definitely paid more. These are probably $10,000 turntables. Because I was so broke. $25 minimum payment, I could afford that. But I think there's the light outside that usually makes this all a wonderful camera obscura is perfectly positioned right now on my car so that it's actually throwing a shadow on my face. So I think that'll be gone in a couple of seconds. But
That's totally fine. Listen, the video's not gonna. I just ripped the audio off these anyway. So.
Oh, that's great. Oh my god,
yeah.
I'm taking this off, dude.
Yeah, this is just. I'm just doing videos so that because I just like being able to talk to people.
Oh, this is great. No, I love this. And by the way, I'm going to keep the jacket on because it tells the kids that I'm working. Like the laser is basically.
Yeah, jacket on. So let me ask you about that with kids during the virus, right? Because your schedule, like the number of, you work on a lot of stuff and you work on a lot of really great stuff too.
Oh,
and when I think about, especially now, it really feels like, would you say now, like, do you feel like you've sort of passed, you're like jumping to the next, does it feel like you're jumping to the next level career wise? How does it feel to you?
A little bit. Look, I'm really happy that, you're talking about kids and COVID, and of course, I was just handed this. Hey, hey, go show mama. Love you.
Diallo just threw the ball to distract,
and he looked at me like I was crazy. He was like, "Wait a second, I was showing you the ball. I wasn't." Now
you're making me chase it down.
Hey, babe, do you mind watching Desmond for a sec? Do you mind watching Desmond? I'm doing a podcast right now. Is that okay? Okay, love you. Thanks.
It's never going to sound like a real thing, no matter how big podcasts get, no matter how much, no matter how much money comes into podcasting. When you say daddy's doing a podcast, it's just never going to sound like a real thing. All right, Dad. Well, when you're done.
Doesn't even convince my house, honestly. I'm looking like a schizophrenic man talking to his computer right now.
Daddy's doing his podcast now. What, Dad? Come on. Dad, what are you doing? I gave you a ball. A ball is more important than a podcast. Yeah.
No, you were asking about like how it feels right now. I would say that that it does feel different than it did even just a year ago. We were on the crux of having two shows that were really well received, but nobody had seen them yet. And now I feel like people have seen the shows. One is on Hulu, so most people have either Hulu or access to a Hulu. And then, so it does feel different. We just found out today that we have season 2 on both shows. I'm so excited about that.
So season 2 of Sherman's and season 2 of Southside?
Season 2 of Southside was announced a little bit ago, like maybe in October, but season 2 of Sherman's is brand spanking new information. It was just announced today.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. With the additional win and victory of the fact that it is also now an AMC show in addition to just an IFC show.
That's fantastic.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm angry because I also work for AMC, so I could have gotten an advanced copy of it. Yeah. I could have gotten an advanced copy of Sherman's Showcase and I didn't. God damn it. Well, this is fantastic news. This means number one,
you don't
Talking Dead.
You don't need the video, dude.
Oh, did your video just go down?
No, my wife just closed the garage doors, so now.
This is all tracking with what people think a podcast is, by the way.
I'm so sorry. This has not happened at all anytime this week. Is this scary?
Of any show for this to happen on, this is the perfect one. So you are totally fine.
I'm having a seance right now. No, listen, man. I think that if anything, maybe we can do a one-off Talking Sherman at the end of the season. Or
Talking Sherman would be a fantastic. I would do a Talking Sherman, and you have to come on Talking Dead if you're caught up on Walking.
Oh, by the way, I have never fallen behind. I feel like there's a whole thread of my phone, which is just my family members across the country, and that thread started about the time they got to Terminus, and it's never stopped. Every single brand new episode. There's at least one time where my sister Spring will say, "Oh no, I haven't watched it yet. Don't start texting about it."
Don't think that I didn't notice the Walking Dead shout out in episode 1 of Southside, when a character pulls out what he calls Lucille Jenkins, which I don't want to spoil anything, but it is definitely worth a watch if people haven't seen Southside. The show's great, and having all these things fall into place, especially now, is such a beautiful time because if you want to talk about having a seance, let's have a seance for what the business was, before March 13th, because it was already rapidly changing. And then the virus just accelerated the breaking apart and the changing. Yeah.
100%. I mean, like the number of people in an effort to save money, because money's tight out there right now. Like the number of people who, canceled subscriptions to basic cable. I mean, like it definitely affects the ecosystems that we sort of, make our living through. It's kind of a hairy time, but, that was already accelerating as well. So, between people going to streaming, people leaving, like as a person who writes shows, I often think now, well, where do I put this? And I always want to know right off the bat, like, where's the streaming side of it? Because I do think that people do get a lot of their, if you're not on streaming, it's almost like you're not existing. Even with the Sherman Showcase special, I get people say, oh man, what channel is it on? I'm like, AMC. And they're like, but when's it going to be on Netflix? Or when's it going to be on Hulu? It's like, I'm like, guys, it hasn't even come on TV yet. There's usually like a 90-day window before it goes to streaming. We're just all learning as we go. I wish I lived in more simple time. There's a part of me that's like, man, just to have 2 shows on the air in 1976, that would have been insane,
Oh, yeah. I mean, like 40 million people a night would watch a show.
20 million people and you're canceled. They're like, dude, we're
it's a tank. It tanked 20 million people. You're done forever. You're finished in this business.
I want to go back and see like what Pink Lady and Jeff made that got them canceled after 3 episodes. They're probably getting like 15 million viewers or something like that.
It would have definitely been an insane number. And now, like people are like, hey, a couple million people watch this network show. That's a big deal, right?
You almost got 1 million people to stop playing Fortnite and tune into a show.
So yeah, the Fortnite kind of spins back into where I was headed before, which is when you have as much work that you have, which is writing work, which is focus. I personally can't be distracted while I'm writing, but but you also have a family at home, kids how many kids do you have?
We have 3 boys.
3 boys. So During the quarantine, how have you and your wife found time to balance time for yourselves, balance time for the kids, balance time for your work?
It's interesting. I feel like, and this is Brittany is such a wonderful, wonderful partner, if you will. She's definitely taken on 90% of the watch the children load during these times. She's an accomplished choreographer. She's the choreographer on Sherman Showcase. And she also has like a party planning service called Riddle My Party. But at the end of the day, during this time, there aren't a lot of parties and there are not a lot of choreography gigs. So she's taken on that burden, even as I feel like in some ways my work has ramped up. It's been, a very busy period in terms of writing, because there is sort of this, we're stocking up on scripts to shoot when we can go back to shooting. I should say season 2 of Southside is finished. Like, we've already written the scripts. Now, will we have to go back and rewrite some? Sure. We're going to have to go back and rewrite some of the scripts because, we have scenes at parades. We have scenes, we have scenes at Soldier Stadium. Like, it's just insane. Like,
we wanted to do that thing from the 2nd or 3rd Matrix where they were having that rave underground and everyone was like smearing all over each other. I think we're not going to be able to do that anymore.
We're not going to be able to shoot that scene anymore. By the way, the first time I even saw that scene, I literally wondered what movie I'd walked into.
It was strange. That was a
weird moment. But yeah, we are talking about maybe going back and rewriting some of the scenes and episodes so that you don't have there's literally so many COVID unfriendly scenes in the current season of Southside 2 as currently written. Like, we have a whole scene where there's a tornado, so you can crowd like 25 characters into a basement. Like, we can't do that. We're like, oh no! I said we might as well do like a handshaking competition. Like, it's just like as COVID unfriendly as you can possibly get.
But it also, I think we're just so much more aware now, I feel like, than we ever had to be about. It's just that whole layer of stuff you just never had to think about before, that now is not only you have to think about it, but strongly informs the kind of stuff that you can even do anymore.
On every level. And just, I actually don't mind the Zoom rooms as much. Like, writing a show with a group of people in a Zoom is not as much fun as being all gathered around the table, but there are still moments where everybody's like in tears and laughing deliriously, and that part of it is still the same. I will say when you do pitch a bad joke in the room, it doesn't hurt as much because you can kind of get a couple of nervous laughs and you're like, okay, that went over like a lead and you move on. On a Zoom, like nobody laughs. And then you kind of like want to be like, am I muted, guys? Am I like, and they're like, no, you're not muted. Like, so
they're like, comedically, yes, you are, but not
comedically. It's pretty painful, but yeah, we don't know what we can shoot. We don't know when we're shooting. I know that some people are getting back to shooting. A lot of unscripted reality stuff is starting maybe as early as this week. Right. But everything else, we just shot a John Legend Father's Day special, which is coming on Sunday. And that was all drone shots and, these gigantic crane, it was ABC, so they could afford like drones, crane shots, like all these things that allowed the crew to be completely distanced. But it's still just weird. Like just even, I don't leave the house that much. I'll be honest. Like even when I go out to pick up groceries or something that we absolutely need, I find the atmosphere and the mood outside just to be weird. Like the people who aren't wearing masks, I'm like, why are they not wearing masks? The people who are wearing masks, I'm like, it's the whole vibe out there is really weird right now.
It is very strange. And I see more people not wearing masks than wearing masks. Yeah. And so
yeah,
I just kind of feel like, oh, okay, well, I don't know, like whether or not you believe that it helps, like, it's probably just a nice sort of like, hey, everyone, just know that I care about. We're all in this.
I care about your grandmother and I care about your cousin with asthma. Yeah, I would think that, I also think it's a matter of the people who can afford to stay home, the people who are, really taking this thing seriously. We're not going to be out on the street just, doing stuff. So it leaves just the people who I feel like are probably thinking, I would hope nobody thinks it's a hoax, but it's sort of a self-selected group, I would think, that's like returning to the restaurants and returning to the gyms right now. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's probably why you see the people that you do see out there are probably not the ones who are going to be that adept at wearing masks. But I saw a report where like 1 in 2 Americans, 1 in 2, 50%, feel like they're only going to wear masks sometimes, so.
That's such a weird statistic. I feel like I'm only going to do it. I got to be honest. I'm just going to do this sometimes. And if I'm really being honest, probably not that much at all. If I'm being honest.
Yeah. But if I'm around people coughing,
Yeah, I mean, I carry one. I mean, I have one in my back pocket right now. Like I got a bunch of these and they're just easily washable. And I just put them on. I put it on and, and I just sort of feel like, what, if it doesn't, I don't mind. Like, it's not that much harder to just do this if it keeps everyone safe. But I'm extra aware because my wife has, she has some kidney stuff that would not be great if she got
right.
Right. So,
I think that's the way to go. And, nobody wants to be lectured to, nobody wants to be preached to, but, trust the numbers. The numbers are not going down the way that we like to think that they are. So I would just encourage people to just look at the numbers and trust as pilots always say, trust your instruments. If the instruments say that you're losing altitude, make a course correction. Right now, Texas, Arizona, and Florida, just, they're not doing good. So, just take that as you may.
And now we pause to thank the sponsor for this episode of the ID10T podcast, Raycon earbuds. You may know this. If you listen to a lot of other podcasts, you've probably heard on other podcasts about Raycon earbuds. They start at about half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market, and they sound just as amazing as other top audio brands. Their newest model, the Everyday E25, are the best ones yet. 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design that gives you a nice noise-isolating fit. They're incredibly comfortable, perfect for conference calls or binging podcasts. And now that most of us work from our homes now, we kind of need isolated audio in our ears to drown out everything else that's going on in our household. So this is a great option for that. They're stylish, they're discreet, there are no dangling wires or stems to distract anyone during video calls. Celebrities like Snoop Dogg, Cardi B, Melissa Etheridge, Brandy are obsessed with Raycons. So pick up a pair and see what everyone's talking about. Now is the time to get the latest and greatest from Raycon. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/ID10T. That's buyraycon.com/ID10T for 15% off. And now we glide seamlessly back into the ID10T podcast, already in progress. I would love to talk about your comedy background a bit because you've worked on great shows and you were in a great sketch group. And going further back, you went to Harvard. And I mean, the Harvard comedy, like Harvard comedy is sort of is it as legendary as the tales? Like, what is the comedy scene like at Harvard?
It's crazy. I feel like there were several comedy tracks at Harvard. There were the guys who went out for the improv groups, and that was sort of what Bashir and I would tend to do. We were the silly jokesters at the table when everybody else was getting great grades. We thought it would be, important for us to go to the table and make everybody laugh. Priorities. But then there was a whole other track, the Lampoon track. And I got to say, and I hope I don't anger anybody, but, the Lampoon is a lot like a college team. Like, it changes out every 4 years. There's no institutional memory there. So some 4 years are better than other 4 years. And the 4 years that I was there, I mean, like, I don't remember them ever putting out anything that I thought was hilarious. When I wanted to read funny college publication, I read The Onion, which was fully, I think at the time was fully still just at University of Wisconsin. There was actually another comedy mag, I want to say it was like called Dragon or Rodent or whatever, that was put out by a completely different group of Harvard guys that we all really loved. We thought it was really funny. But the 4 years I was there, I culturally, I could not have seen myself pledging, because you do have to like pledge to be a member of the Lampoon. But, lo and behold, the second I graduated, every time I, went out for a job, they were like, "Oh, did you do the Lampoon?" And I was like, "Dude, I wasn't sweating the Lampoon." I feel like Bashir and our comedy is different, maybe because we didn't go through that rubric of the Lampoon. Even to this day, when we're hiring writers for our rooms, I'll read a Lampoon. I actually read a Lampoon's alumni submission not too long ago and thought it was brilliant. She's clearly very funny. So we're not against that, but I do feel like sometimes it's overstated, this idea that like Harvard comedy writers are any better. Sometimes they're worse. I've met a couple of Harvard guys. I'm like, that dude is getting hired because he went to Harvard. He is not that funny.
What did you study?
Man, I could have done better. I went in there as a econ major, but econometrics just started kicking my butt. Like, econometrics is this heavily applied mathematic version of economics, and it was really it was applied math. And I never had that. I was always good in school. I never had that sense of drowning. Like, no matter how hard I study, I cannot get this. And I'll never forget, the professor's name was Otto. And Otto was like, "Well, just keep trying, Diallo." But like, I couldn't get it. Like, that was my best German accent, by the way. I couldn't get it. I couldn't understand. So I switched to the humanities, like a good kid who wanted to keep making A's. And I took history, and I took the American sectional crisis because I had grown up in the South. And when you grow up in the South, you're constantly seeing these Civil War markers and placards. Right. And I grew up loving just reading and knowing everything there was to know about the Civil War. I grew up on a creek in Georgia, and the Battle of Utoy Creek. I love the fact that there had been a battle of the Civil War like right behind my house at one point. So that became my love and my interest, and sort of became my love of story. Because up until that point, all the writing I had done had been political at the Kennedy School and the Harvard Political Review. After I sort of discovered my love of story, all my work became fiction again. I sort of went back to third grade me, who would write spy novels with Royce Riddle, the World War II black spy, who somehow was able to infiltrate the Nazis and kill Hitler. That was. You're
definitely going to write that, right? I mean, like, that is definitely a thing.
My mom saved all the books that I published. Cool thing about my elementary school, they found out that I was a writer. So like in kindergarten, ironically, I published a book called the True Book of Dinosaurs, and all the parents thought it was funny that I put the True Book, like all the rest were lies. And that book, I mean, blatant plagiarism. I just copied passages out of my favorite books about dinosaurs. But between that and then by the time I was 8, I was really into World War II. Indiana Jones had an effect on me. I wanted to know everything about the Nazis and the Allies. I played Axis and Allies for that reason. That's where my writer bug comes from.
But also your sketch group at Harvard wasn't just you and Bashir, but also Wyatt Cenac was in it and Robin Thede. Like
that was our first sketch group after college. That was
after college.
Yeah, and we had nothing going on, and I was in a sketch group, and Bashir was in another sketch group, but we were still friends. And then one day we sat down, and I was like, you know what? I like my sketch group, but I'm always the co-pilot. I can never be the pilot. And Bashir was like, they always make me the chef. And we figured out that like we should form like an all black sketch group, which at the time it's amazing that there weren't that many of those. And so we decided we were going to pull away from our sketch groups where we were the only black guy. And we were going to form our own black sketch group. And we auditioned, and the people that we auditioned have all gone on to much better, greater stuff. Like it was me, Bashir, Robin Thede, Wyatt Cenac, this actress named Nefertari, Spencer, Nika King, who's on HBO's Euphoria. Just everybody in that group has just kind of like gone on to do great stuff, and we still stay in touch. Robin Thede texted me right before we started recording this to say congratulations on season 2. We've all stayed friends, and we always talk about doing a reunion show one day. It's really going to be an alliance time.
when you're in these other sketch groups that you break away from, are you able to have conversations with them? Like, hey, can we talk about like different types of roles or different, I'm submitting these type of sketches and they're not getting through, or what are the conversations around that?
Conversation was pretty short. It was just like, hey, can I do something other than, but I would always try to make a meal out of my snack. So I'll never forget the time that they made me the co-pilot when I really wanted to play the pilot. Because it was a much better part. I just decided I was going to just really eat up that 1 minute that I had in the sketch. So when the pilot died, I went big. I admittedly went big, but the audience ate it up. And I was like, okay, so sometimes it can be fun to be the co-pilot. But really, it was just a matter of, and I think this is still the case because, my wife, when she decided she wanted to do more like comedy in her choreography, she started attending UCB here in LA. And I see now that like even more than ever, like there's so much politics and there's so much just interpersonal politics that go into which Herald group you join. And I think anybody who's been to a UCB or IO or any of those places, Second City, there's just so much that goes into which group you get to join. And yeah, it's tough, man. It's really tough. People don't always get to be in the group that they want to be in.
So then you make the group that you want, and then did it immediately feel like, oh yes, this is what I've been missing? It immediately
felt, yeah. So nowadays I think it's called the Comedy Central stage, but back then we were able to. We actually borrowed $750 from Bernie Mac. One of our actresses was a PA on the Bernie Mac show, and she went to Bernie and she was like, "Hey, we want to rent this space to put up a sketch show." And by the way, this is like there was no YouTube yet. I want to say that there was. YouTube might have been there, but people still really wanted to be on E-Bomb's world. That was the pinnacle. That was like the Tonight Show for sketch.
I haven't heard that name in so long.
It was just like, oh, E-Bomb's world. Oh, you made it. So that was the goal. But if you couldn't do that, then you had to tell people, hey, I'm a really funny person. This is where you can find me. You couldn't send a link. You had to be like, you have to hop in your car at 6:30 and be across town on Santa Monica and Poinsettia at 7:00 and see me on a stage where I'm going to hopefully have enough people there where you're not the only person in the audience. But the very first time we stood that sketch show up, packed house. Like we had 99 people there. It was standing room only, and it killed. And everything that we wrote really rocked. And from that point on, we knew that we were on the right track. Just to give you a short version of where we went from there. We started shooting videos for YouTube. One of them went viral. It was a video called Condi Rice Raps, but it got 2 million views in a day back when that was good enough to get you signed to CAA.
Yeah.
It was like we're going to be the Jib Jab guys, sure enough. And, so we went to Aspen for the comedy festival, and Jimmy Fallon saw some of our work, and then he hired us because he was taking over the Tonight Show, not the Tonight Show, Late Night. Taking over Late Night from Conan. And that was when our lives changed because we packed up our lives. We moved to New York, and we were there for the next 4 years writing Slow Jam the News and History of Rap and a bunch of Real Housewives of Late Night comedy and just having a lot of fun. in 30 Rock. And it was, that was our break into this business.
Sketch and improv people, I feel like, have such a leg up in the business because you are writers and performers, and you know how to produce. Like, you have to know how to produce. It really just seems to encapsulate, stand-up is such its own specific thing that a lot of times can be difficult to translate into other parts of the business. But when you do what you do, you learn so many different facets of the basics of storytelling as quickly as possible. Again, producing, writing, acting, all the different elements that make lighting, music, all the different elements that make a show a show. And
Chris, I got to say, I've never thought of it like this before. And it's so interesting because I've spent most of my creative life envying the people who can get up with just a mic and tell jokes to a room full of people who don't know them. Sometimes they're drunk. They're in a weird city. I've always had so much respect because I would love to do stand-up. I don't understand it. I don't think it can be necessarily taught to a person, even though there have been times in life I'm like, if life ever slows down, I'm going to sign up for like a introduction to stand-up class or something like that and do that. But I do think you're right about the production element, because when you do sketch, even if you're just doing it on a stage, you have to figure out, okay, we have this much money, so we're going to spend this much on wigs, we're going to spend this much on costumes, we're going to try and pay everybody just a little bit of it. Like, that's like baseline, very basic production. And you're right, like that's a side of it that I feel like you only get when you do sketch. And honestly, anybody working at SNL or Late Night with Seth or The Tonight Show, all those writers have to produce their own bits. So when you pitch it at 9 a.m. in the morning and Jimmy comes back with his decisions about which sketches are going to be in the show that night at 11, then you basically have 2 hours to rewrite, do some basic pre-production, then walk it into Jimmy, read it with Jimmy. And then for the next 2 hours, 3 hours, you're literally running around to every department trying to figure out, okay, I need this much, we need Jimmy's guitar. I'm going to work with the Roots on the song. Get me those wigs and that, that hair dye, and like all that stuff has to be done by the time the audience fills in at 5 o'clock. Now, everybody's working from home now, so it's a much different beast. I don't know how you produce these shows in a COVID environment. It seems like everybody's doing much more intimate discussion type stuff, and the sketches have been greatly toned down. But if we ever find that vaccine, it'll be interesting.
But I just think as sketch, first of all, I think you could do stand-up, because if you just did it a bunch, you'd figure it out. And, what I would say to sketch people is, like, if you're interested in trying stand-up, ultimately I think stand-up is really, it can be hard when you don't do it a lot to think about it, because what you don't realize is like, oh, you tend to think of it as some other thing. Oh, when you're doing stand-up, you're doing some other thing, but it's just, the more you can draw out on stage, like, you're the thing, and that's kind of hard to conceptualize at some point, because you're like, well, I'm just me. I don't know what, but then the more you do it, you figure it out. But at least with sketch people too, you could probably write from the point of view of like the character of Diallo first. And then that.
I've never thought of that before. I'm not going to lie. That is such an interesting. Maybe I should just pretend like Diallo Riddle is a character and just write. Because I will say I have written, not stand-up material, but like there's a pretty famous comedian who came to us one time and was like, I just want you guys to tell me like some areas that you think I should write my stand-up to. And so then we would just like go through the news and like pull out things that had happened and then just say, hey, we think these are interesting takes on what's happened. And then he would go off and write. But but maybe if I had to think, oh, I need to write wasn't Chris Rock, but like if I was like, oh, I'm going to write some stuff in the voice of Chris Rock. I think that gets towards the heart of like having a clear voice to write in, having a POV that people are like, because we all know that Chris Rock joke is going to be different from a Dion Cole joke, is going to be different from a Marlon Wayans joke or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I notice about, particularly with a show like Southside is that your first episode already felt like it could have been season 3, where it's like, because the characters are so well defined. And I can't help but wonder, do you think like when you have such a strong background in sketch and you're putting on a live show and you're doing a series of sketches, do you think it's fair to say like, there's really no time, like all the characters have to be very clearly defined for the audience, because they have to know right away. They have to get right away what the angle on the scene is so that they can follow along with it.
Yeah, well, a couple of things on that. First off, I think one of the reasons why Southside feels so lived in from the very first episode is that we went out of our way to cast people who were not actors in Hollywood. We went to Chicago and did all our auditioning there. And in some cases, they were just people from Bashir's past, because Bashir grew up in Chicago. I grew up in Atlanta. He grew up in Chicago. So if there was a character who drove a bus, it might be that guy it might be a guy who actually drives a bus. You know what I mean? Like, there's actually a pretty fun scene in episode 2 where we were shooting on a bus, and it was supposed to be our version of Speed. You got to watch the show; it'll make sense. But we were shooting an episode that was supposed to be taking place on a bus, and the bus driver, who's just an actual Chicago bus driver, was saying things that made us laugh. So we were like, "Hey, let's turn the camera around and put him on." I mean, I think some of that has to do with our time at Fallon too, because at Fallon, the cast of the show changed every day. Like every day there was a new guest star. So you had to figure out how to get them to fit into the show. And similarly, we would do a lot of work on Southside with people who were not professional actors, but they were funny people. So it was just a matter of getting them to stay themselves and not somehow become an actor portraying themselves. So I think that's why the show felt like it could have been in season 3, because those are real Chicagoans. There's very little artifice there. I think the most famous person in season 1 is probably Lil Rel or maybe Kel Mitchell, but everybody in that show is from Chicago, except for me. I'm the one faker who we actually addressed that in season 2. But yeah, I think that's it's a lot of fun working on Southside, because there's so much of it that's just authentic. There's, like I said, we went to the city and we had, a very rigorous audition process, and we found some talented actors who'd never done anything outside of theater, local theater.
And so having that eye for talent too, does it sort of make you go, oh, why don't we go to more cities and find, instead of just, the same pool of actors that, does it sort of inspire you to go, if we uncover this treasure trove of people in Chicago, how many other cities have performers that we should,
Seriously. I mean, listen, I should say that our first foray into scripted was actually a show about Atlanta called Brothers in Atlanta. It was the show about my hometown, and it was the first thing we did after Fallon. And then we were in development at HBO for 4 very long years. And it's still a little bit of a bittersweet memory, because we learned so much on that we were able to take those lessons and, quite honestly, even some of those ideas and apply them to Southside. But I think Atlanta, my God, I can't go to Atlanta without laughing. Like, there's so many personalities, and the city of Atlanta talks to you. Like, you can be in line at the Varsity, you can be in an Uber. Like, people in Atlanta, they talk in their perspectives, and that accent that I grew up hearing, because my family's from LA. I was the weirdo kid who didn't have an Atlanta accent. But, I went to the same high school as Goody Mob, and we went to the rival high school of Outkast. Like, those thick accents of the city, like, I still dream of doing a show in Atlanta one day, because I just think Atlanta's just bubbling over with just funny people. I would love to pull that talent one day.
And are you starting to get to a point where, because I imagine you're probably at a point where there's so much stuff coming in. Do you want to be able to say yes to everything? Do you still have that sort of that young performer thing where you're like, oh my God, I can't say no to work. Like, this is what I work for, But at a certain point, I mean, people only have so much energy in their bodies. And so how are you sort of staying on course and picking and choosing and making sure that
this industry has a weird way of sometimes choosing for you. There's a project that I would love for it to happen just so I can tell you this is happening. But right now it looks like we're on hold, and it's only because the executive we've been working with might be unceremoniously tossed out at some point. You know what I mean? Like, and it kills me, because this is an idea, and I won't out it right now because I don't want to get in trouble. But let's just say it's a spinoff of a movie that I'm sure most people love, but they would not think there's a spinoff there. But I've seen it 8 million times, and there's a character in a 5-minute scene that I'm like, what is that guy's story? What is his story? He is amazing. And then we've built this entire deep 20-page outline of what his movie would be. And I really hope that it happens. We've partnered with the producers of the original movie, and this would be big news if it happens. But right now, I don't know if it's going to happen because, again, some of the producers who were attached to the original movie are having a hard time with it right now. And, I just hope that they keep their job long enough so that, we can make this movie. It would be 10-year-old me's dream come true to make this movie happen.
I mean, the thing about this business is that you never know, like just when you
never know which one's going to go forward. I'm sorry. That was the actual answer to your question. Yes, you have 10 ideas thrown at you. And my theory has always been like, yeah, well, let's see where this goes, because you look up the next day and all of a sudden it's down to 8. I guess the problem becomes is if, they all go forward. And then I feel like that's probably a good problem to have, but that's never actually happened.
But but I'm saying also that this thing could go away, and then 6 months later, it's like, oh, we're shooting it next week. Wait.
Oh, hey, you guys had that spinoff idea. We love it. Yeah, 100%. We once put all of our eggs into one basket. It was called Our Time at HBO. We turned down so many offers because we were like, this is one thing. This is our baby. And we were there. We always said we were like Castro. We were there for 3 different presidents of HBO. When we arrived, it was one person, and then somebody else took over. And then by the time we were being pushed out the door, after making 2 pilots, by the way, 2 pilots that I stand by to this day, we were serving under a 3rd president. So it's just it can be really tough sometimes to see projects that you love that are your heart go away. But I think that's why you have to have a couple of lines out there, because you don't know which one is going to actually make it all the way through. We were shocked that we actually pitched Sherman Showcase to just IFC, and we pitched Southside to just Comedy Central. And we were shocked that they both went forward, but we never thought they'd both make it to pilot. They both made it to pilot. Then they both made it to series, and they both got 100% on Rotten Tomato. Like, both got 100% on Rotten Tomato. And I feel like at that point we felt like, you know what, the dreams that we had when we first started out in this business, they felt validated, because, even if one had gotten 99%, we'd have been like, oh, that's stinker. Like, they both got 100%. And they're very different shows. And we put a lot of heart into both of them. We really did.
And do you feel like having a partner like Bashir, does that make the journey easier in a sense, because you have someone else to keep you going? I mean, do you guys, is there like, is one of you more negative than, like, or do you trade off? Like, how do you?
It's a total trade-off. I think sometimes the public perception of Bashir and I is that, Diallo's the nice one and Bashir's the tough guy. Like, we really do in our own personal time. We have quite a bit of trade-off, because there are definitely some times when I'm the pessimist, like, oh, that thing's never going to happen. And then there are definitely times when I'm the one like, nah, Bashir, trust me, it's going to happen. It's like a weird dance. Even my wife is just like, that's your first marriage. Like, we've known each other for, when did we meet? We met in 1995. So it's been 25 years, man.
Your friendship is the same age as MTV's Singled Out. That gives you an idea.
But we're younger than the grind, so I think we're okay. We're younger than the grind.
I haven't thought about the grind in like 2 decades.
Come on, man! With Eric, what was Eric Nees? Is that his name?
Eric Nees from season 1 of The Real World. Oh my God, the grind! Yeah, those shows, that was basically.
That was Soul Train for MTV.
Yes.
Like, it was videos and people dancing. I miss the good dance show. That's kind of one of the reasons I like Sherman Showcase, is because we're able to put so much spotlight on dancers. Like, and by the way, our dancers, we auditioned them one time for their ability to dance, and the second audition was all jokes. Like, we wanted to audition people who could be both good dancers and be talented comedians, and I've been blown away by some of our dancers on camera, because they are so freaking funny. They know their way around a joke. I kind of wanted the Showcase dancers to be as famous as like the Fly Girls in Living Color, or the Solid Gold dancers. Like, I wanted them to have their own fame outside of the show.
I was also excited that, I don't know, this might be a spoiler. If this is a spoiler, I'll cut it out. But you just sort of casually threw out that there is a Last Dragon sketch.
Not a spoiler. There's a Last Dragon sketch in the black.
And I said to you, I've seen that movie probably 200 times, and there are two people. Like I said to you when I was doing Singled Out, like sometimes we would have celebrity guests come on and pick from the dating pool, and Timac, who played Bruce Leroy. Came on the show, and I was beside myself with joy. I must have.
I hope you told him that. I hope you told him that.
1,000%. I was like, I've seen your movie so many times. Like I was so beside myself, to the point that, like, I also said, every so often I'll go on and see if I can find like a Daddy Green's Pizza T-shirt prop or something.
That has to exist. Somebody has made a Daddy Green's Pizza T-shirt, right?
I've seen them. I probably like on Redbubble. Like, I don't know if I think just like fans have made them. That just say "Direct your feet to Daddy Green's Pizza." But I feel like
Questlove has some one of a kind shirts that he's made that reference The Last Drag. I feel like I've seen one. I wish I could remember what it said, but yeah.
I hope more people. That movie was not only just a super cool and fun movie, but like a genuinely groundbreaking piece of cinema. And I
feel like every kid who saw it like immediately wanted to like karate chop and kick every single thing you saw coming out of the movie. Like, it was literally just like you just couldn't control your hands at that moment. Everybody wanted the glow.
Everyone wanted the glow. Like a good fighter could get their hands to glow, but a great fighter could get their whole body to glow.
By the way,
I was never able.
I didn't even know that there was I didn't know that Bruce Lee was known as the Dragon. So the idea that it's called The Last Dragon, it literally is just Berry Gordy trying to make some money off of the karate kung fu fad. It's such in some ways it could have been such a cynical exercise. And but yeah, we loved it. And the soundtrack is great too. Like the Vanity song, Seventh Heaven, like I put that on at a party one time and people lost it. Like, it's not a song that you think but if you hear it, you're like, I finally found a place. You're like, oh, I know the song. Like,
never say never at heaven's elevator door.
What is she talking about?
Because
what is that about?
Once you dare, you can't get it up anymore. That and I actually have. I have on my phone, when you got the glow, you need the glow. You need the glow to grow.
I mean, Willie Hutch,
love that song.
Willie Hutch, the same guy who did, Brother's Gonna Work It Out. Brother's Gonna Work It Out. Like, he did so many classic songs for movies. In some ways, he's the Mark Mothersbaugh of black cinema.
Oh my God, that is the fucking greatest.
Uncelebrated.
That is the most genius. We
can talk music for days. I feel like there's certain people, Mark Mothersbaugh and who's my other favorite? Danny Elfman. Those are my two. I mean, like, I think the music for the 1989 Batman is the most perfect score that has ever been written. I even if you don't like Batman, like that score, I bought that CD and that CD I listened to 800 times. I did everything.
Well, it is. Prince was pretty good.
Bad Dance got a really bad rap. I mean, like, I feel like millennials only know Bad Dance as a punchline to Shaun of the Dead.
Right.
But I was there, and Bad Dance, when it came out, was pretty special. It was not to keep using analogies, it's the sicko mode / Bohemian Rhapsody of Batman movies, because like it has like 4 or 5 parts. It's got the Vicky Vale. I like Batman. Like, it's got 3 totally different parts to it, and it's a fantastic. I just wish they had let Prince play the Joker. That was his whole thing. He was like, I'll do the soundtrack, but you have to let me play the Joker. And at some point they told him, no, you're not going to play the Joker.
We're going to get this Jack Nicholson character.
Where is Jack? Is Jack okay? I feel like we haven't seen Jack in like 10 or 11 years.
Jack's in his 80s. I'm sure he must be in his 80s by now. I honestly don't know.
That's crazy. There are always those people that you feel like they must not be alive, but then you figure out that, oh no, but I would know if they were dead. And it's just like
he's 83. Jack Nicholson is 83. But I also wonder.
He doesn't want to act anymore. I mean, isn't there not Gene Wilder? Who's the guy? He's still alive, but he never does anything. Oh, Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman.
I would imagine at a certain point, you know, like you probably have to when people are that good and they really like know how to immerse themselves, and you know, it probably just feels like, oh God, I don't fucking feel like leaving my house to do that. How, like, what do I need? How much more attention? How much more money? Like, what is it that I need?
And plus, they did it when it was really fun to do it. You know, like they did it. Like, let's be honest, like they're you know, they were like, hey, Jack Warner, you can get me out of this, right? Like, you know, they have no interest in living in smartphone era Hollywood, you know.
What did you do for Baby Driver? Because I read that it said that you did something for the soundtrack for Baby Driver. My agent represents Edgar Wright, and he was like, look, you know, I know that you're doing. I'm not going to imitate my agent. It's very tempting. He's such a character. But he told me that Edgar was shooting in Atlanta. He knew that I was from Atlanta and that I had a great interest in music. And can I just put you guys together? We met at Lil Dom's over in Los Feliz, and we hit it off. And I feel like for a while, like we were just buddies. Like something would happen on the news, I'd be like, Edgar, did you see that thing? You know, like we were like just buddies for a little bit. And then we would talk about music. We talked about so much music for Baby Driver. And admittedly, at the time, I had no idea that he really meant it when he was like, the music is going to be the third character in the movie. And when I finally saw a cut of it, I was blown away, and I felt ridiculous because it gave me the chance to have a walk-on speaking part in this thing. And I was shooting our stupid HBO pilot at the time, and so I didn't take him up on it. I would have loved to have been physically in the movie as well, but we worked on the music of Baby Driver together. And is there any one particular thing that you like more than the other in terms of acting, writing, show running, music? Like what, or is it just?
No, you know what? It's one of those things where I miss the thing the most that I'm not currently doing. Like right now, I'm like, when am I ever going to be able to do any acting? Like it's just a weird time. So I miss that a lot. But I think it's the greatest gift of all to be able to wake up in the morning, and some days you have writing and acting, and other days you might have acting and just reading. You know, like I think I always tell people, young people who are trying to get into this business, that if I have any advice, try to be a member of all three of the major guilds: writer, director, and SAG. You know, just try it, you know, because I think truly creative people have a lot of things to offer. We just finished shooting this Sherman Showcase Black History Month spectacular. We were putting John Legend in front of the camera again, and I always have people say, wow, John was really funny when you guys worked with him. I didn't know that he had those funny bones. I knew Chrissy was funny. I didn't know John was so funny. John is hilarious, and he's actually a really good actor. He memorizes. I can tell he memorizes his lines, and the way he's so eloquent. His breathing style is very similar to when he's singing. So I just think that if you're a creative person, give it all a try. It doesn't mean that you have to devote equal amounts of time to everything, but at least in the case of Bashir and I, we really enjoy everything. I'll put it like this. When I was on the NBC show Marlon, I loved being just an actor on that show. It meant that I didn't have to be in the writer's room until 3 a.m. trying to figure out how to tie the A story to the B story. No, I just showed up the next day like a jerk. It was like, all right, let's see this drama you guys wrote. All right, let's.
Oh, I just have to stand there and say that. Okay, yeah, that's no problem.
All right, I'll just wing it. You know, like I love just being an actor on that show. And there have been other shows where I wouldn't want to be in front of the camera. I just want to write them. So every day is a little bit different, and thankfully, we get to do something different every day.
But something that I would love your advice on is, I think a really challenging thing in the business can be to assemble the right writer's room for the project, right? Because you really have to assemble this kind of Justice League of different types of, especially in comedy, like everyone kind of has their own superpower, but then they all kind of have to work together. And so how do you, because it feels like on all the stuff that you work on, you really get the best out of your group, out of your
that's cool.
performers and out of your writers. And so how,
okay. I'll tell you what it is. On Sherman's, we always knew that this was supposed to be a show that everybody can enjoy, but music nerds in particular have to enjoy. Like, that's got to be the demographic. And so I hired everybody who I ever talked about music with in terms of like the comedy writers I knew, like, and even some people I'd never met before. One of the guys on Sherman's just happened to go to my old high school, and I knew Rob Hayes. Do you know Rob Hayes? He's from Atlanta, and he's about 10 years younger than me, but he came to us via his agent or whatever. I read his packet. It was really funny. And then I started talking to him on the phone, and I have really giggled so much. Like, we were talking about everything from Two Live Crew to dance hall music. I could tell he just really knew his stuff when it came to music. I was like, this is a perfect fit. And then there were other people who we brought in. Emily Goldwyn, who is, she's an LA kid. She grew up out here with a really interesting story, which I won't go into right now. But like, she was like she was a writer who was talented, who reminded me of talking music with my hipster friends. And it's still like just so funny, and her sense of humor is so weird. And she's such a quirky individual in herself. Like, I was just like, I want her in the room. So that was a conversation about music. With Southside, because we wanted to just live and breathe like the city, we reached out to all the funniest comedians who we knew were from Chicago, who were also comedy writers. And we interviewed a ton of people there. A lot of people you probably know. But we ended up hiring those. In that case, we ended up hiring the people who we thought were funny, but also when you read their script, they could tell a story. Because we knew that, as opposed to Sherman's, which is more like a sketch show, Southside, we really wanted the stories to be really tight. We wanted them to have, really good structure. And so a couple of people we thought were funny, their scripts were a little weak. The people who we hired were the people who had great scripts and were funny. So every show's a little bit different. It depends on what you're trying to get.
Yeah, but you still have to get those performances and still get that material. Like, it's not just enough to be like a funny person or a good writer. You also have to sort of be like a content and personality manager at the same time, right? Because you have to kind of draw it all out and make sure that because you're guiding the direction of everything. Well,
I will say that we've worked in every type of room. We worked in rooms where it was very cliquish and not, like this side of the room is all, they're going to laugh at their own jokes, but they're never going to laugh at the people across the table. Like, some rooms are like that. And Lorne has even said in interviews that, like, he likes to keep the SNL room a little cliquish just because he feels like that level of competition is like the Stones versus the Beatles. It keeps everybody on their toes. I think Bashir and I have always wanted to take a slightly different approach, which is make everybody feel like you are loved, pitch jokes that are absolutely garbage, and we're not going to judge you, because we really want everybody to feel safe, because we think we're going to get the best material when everybody feels just safe in the room. Like,
I 1,000% agree. Comedians, I feel like some comedians thrive in toxic environments, but I thrive in comfortable environments. And I feel like that was always our mission with, like, when people would come on at midnight, it's like, let's let the comics feel as comfortable and loved as possible so that they blossom and so that they open up, as opposed to, the feeling judged thing is like, I get nervous if I feel like, someone's judging my jokes, and I feel less inclined, like, I shouldn't say this. It's just going to sound stupid. But when you feel free to, like, oh, you can fuck around, then I just feel like it's better. It's like everyone wins,
I think so too. There's a funny story about Sid Caesar's writer's room, which everybody, if you don't know this story, just go ahead and Google the Sid Caesar show and look at the list of people he had in that room. Some of them are still alive, amazingly. It's a murderer's row of some of the best comedic writers ever. But apparently Sid Caesar was a complete jerk, and he would bait people and really make you feel terrible about yourself, all in an effort to, in his mind, get the best material. Fast forward to Andy Griffin, one of the guys who worked on that show. And Andy Griffin gets approached by the network, and they're like, hey, Griffith, we're going to do a show with you at the heart of it. And he's like, I have no interest. And they're like, why? We're offering you a show. What are you talking about? You don't have any interest. And he's like, I've seen what it takes to be the head of the show, and I would never want to do that. He was like, you got to be too mean and nasty. And I just, you can imagine Andy Griffith saying this stuff. And he's like, I just don't have any interest in it. And they said, well, here's the deal, Andy. If you're the boss, you can set whatever tone you want. That's when the light went off in his head. And apparently he was one of the very nicest people in this industry you could ever work with, because he was determined not to be Sid Caesar. So,
oh my God, that's really incredible. I just imagine that when they said that to him and the light went off, the camera just pushes into his face, and in his head you hear like he just zoned.
Written the end of episode 1 of the Andy Griffith story. There you go.
That opening credit sequence was in his head. He just imagines the writer's room is a kid going fishing, and it's like, oh, this can be great.
He's like, man, I don't want to be in this room. I just want my own rod and reel and to be walking down a dirt street.
I just want to feel like we're just gonna go catch a trout. That's what this is. This show's just gonna be about, catching trout.
I hear that Don Knotts was actually a really nice guy. I have a real love of those early Hollywood days, which is a little bit weird because as an African American, like, you often think like, would they have even liked me? Like, you know, like there have been times when, like, I'll look up the name of a person whose artwork, Rodin. I'll look up Rodin and I'll then type the word racist just to make sure that there's not something terrible in his past I don't know about, you know? But I also heard, like, stories about who was really magnanimous and who was really nice to people. And one of my favorite is Jack Benny. You know, like, I think that the character of Rochester, it kind of grates on today's ears because, you know, you don't want to hear, what's up, boss, and all that kind of talk. But if you really listen to those old Jack Benny shows, they are excellent in a way that the Bob Hope shows are not. Like, the Bob Hope shows are such timely jokes. Like, the punchline will be like, well, I wouldn't say I was Roosevelt, and the audience goes crazy because it's a timely reference. But the Jack Benny show had characters that are so well defined that whether they're making timely jokes or not timely jokes, the characters are so well defined that, like, it's funny to me to this day. Like, I love to hear his interplay with his band leader and with Rochester and with all the wonderful characters. And apparently Jack Benny, another one, just the nicest guy. I was watching Phil Hartman talk to Letterman in like a 93 interview, and he was saying how he's going to make a Jack Benny movie, and he breaks out like a spot on Jack Benny impression. I was like, holy smokes, Phil is the GOAT. And I'm really sad that he didn't get to make it because he died like a year later or something like that.
Oh, man.
And Phil understood that, like, you know, there are some true Minchy dudes in our business who are just really nice, super talented, super funny people to work with.
Yeah, and honestly, it really feels like, you know, those Jack Benny stories hopefully inspire people to, or the Andy Griffith story. It's like, oh yeah, you can, you know, particularly in Jack Benny's case, because I think, you know, Sid Caesar probably made himself the alpha of all the sketches, and Jack Benny, I think, probably made himself the beta of all the sketches.
Absolutely. Jack Benny is basically just walking through a room full of crazy people who all get the big joke, you know.
And they get to shit on him, and he just kind of looks to camera, and he wanted people to.
He was very gracious.
Yes. Because he just felt like, oh, people should shine. It's still technically my show. But they should shine.
It's the Jack Benny show. You don't have to keep proving it to us night after night. Like, Jack was known for giving everybody else the big punchline. And I think that's awesome. And by the way, if you give them the big punchline, then you get to come in with, like, the sort of understated, like, straight man punchline, which in my opinion is, like, completely underrated. Like, I feel like Michael J. Fox was, like, the king of, like, letting Mallory say some crazy stuff. And then he would just say, really, Mal? And he would get a whole nother joke, you know, like, like which honestly, as a writer, what I strive for is for a character to say something so absurd and hilarious that the other character, all they have to do is just sort of pause. The audience is already laughing because they know that we've all heard this crazy thing being said. And then it's just like, it's slow and across the plate. The home run is yours if you come up with the right understated response, you know?
You reminded me of my favorite Alex P. Keaton moment, which was that exact thing where Mallory told some completely impossible to follow story that made a lot of sense to her. And then it just ended, and the story didn't really have an ending, and there was a pause, and Alex just goes, it's quite a gripping tale, Mallory. Like, it was just this, like, it was such a cut in this, like, such a fucked up way. And I didn't understand because I was just a little kid. So I didn't really understand that the joke of that show was super conservative kid with super hippie parents. Like, that just totally, I kind of understood that. But looking back, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, he was, you know, he was a briefcase, the Young Republican Club. They were like the free love hippies. And so that was where the tension came from.
I had very sort of like very pro-Black conscious parents. And I was watching Family Ties, and I didn't adopt all of the Reagan politics, but I definitely was impressionable enough that I started wearing a tie to school every day and carrying all my books in a briefcase. And all of that is due to Michael J. Fox making it look so fun and making it look so cool.
But you only had to wait like a year before then you started wearing the sleeveless puffy vest from Back to the Future. So
to this day, anytime someone wears a puffy vest, I do think of Back to the Future. Which
I thought you were going to say, I do ask them if they jumped ship. What's with the life preserver?
Teen Wolf 2. Can we talk about Teen Wolf 2 real quick?
Oh, with Jason Bateman?
Not a bad
Teen Wolf. Do you mean Teen Wolf or Teen Wolf TOO with Jason Bateman?
Oh, yeah, TOO.
You mean the original Teen Wolf?
Yes.
Yeah, we can talk about the original Teen Wolf. Yes.
No. I just reminded of like somebody who tried to come after Michael J. Fox, but it wasn't a bad movie. You know, like I feel like it definitely killed off that franchise, but I liked it as a kid personally.
You know, that was fun, and Doc Hollywood is a fun rewatch every once in a while.
Is it really? Yeah. I don't know if I saw that one as a kid. You know, I feel like that's one that I missed. Is that Dan Aykroyd?
No. Doc Hollywood is Michael J. Fox, big city doctor. He's driving cross country. Car breaks down in a small town. He like runs over the judge's fence, so they make him the town doctor while his car's being repaired, and they keep stalling to keep him there, but he wants to go be a plastic surgeon in LA. So it is just one of those like
high concept. High concept.
Well, but at the core of it, it's just like, sure, you think the flashy big city's all great, but when you really kind of strip it all away, the most important thing are your neighbors and a glass of lemonade on your porch. Like it's one of those types of movies.
I got it. No problem.
I'm curious what, you know, in a time right now where it just feels like 2020 is just a series of like, really, what the fuck else? You know, like it's how are you personally finding spots of joy? How are you able to, and how are you able to sort of communicate, you know, to your kids on days where I'm sure you feel like I don't fucking even want to get up and look at the news because I know it's going to be miserable and bum me out. Like, what are you doing in those moments? Are you funneling it into comedy? Do you meditate? Like
meditation is one of those things. I'm like, why don't I just do it? Like, just do it. Like, it clearly works. Can't seem to get around to it. I haven't been sitting around depressed the whole time. I mean, like, you know, when COVID first came along, that was absolutely terrifying, and we're obviously still dealing with it. When the demonstration started, I actually felt encouraged because it seemed like for the first time in my lifetime, people were like seriously taking concrete steps to address something that has been a problem for centuries. So, you know, I'm one of the people who I feel like there's hope. You know, some of the new laws being passed, some of the new things that are happening. I feel, you know, and I hope that the rug isn't just pulled out from underneath all of this, but I feel hopeful that this might actually lead to some long-term change, because I've actually been shocked at some of the other things that have happened seemingly overnight in my lifetime, like when gay marriage was approved by the Supreme Court. You know, like I think sometimes there can be just like a groundswell and things can get better for a lot of people. And so I feel a little bit encouraged by that. I don't think that my approach to comedy has changed at all, because it's always been just about like, what am I seeing and what do I think is true? If anything, it seems like nowadays people are more open to perspectives that aren't necessarily their own perspective or the perspective they grew up with. Definitely not their parents' perspective. So again, fault me for being an optimist. I feel hopeful that times are getting better in some ways.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to gloss over the fact that you just said something that was like that any comedy writer or any writer really should listen to the extent that I'm legitimately going to write it down and try to remember it for my stand-up. But it's what do I see and what's true? I mean, even just that might seem so just, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. But I feel like it's something that I certainly forget most of the time. Oh yeah, I'm not writing a joke for the sake of a joke. What am I saying and what am I seeing and what's true? Like that is, I hope you understand how much I appreciate and what a stunningly simple and elegant and beautiful piece of advice that is, that I hope people really absorb who are creative types.
I appreciate it, man. I think the results are always better when you write whatever you're seeing, because, we have a song on the Black History Month special called Add Some Kente. And we wrote it in October of last year because in our families, like, kente cloth was like that thing that your parents wore. Maybe you wore it to graduation, the graduation kente cloth stole that a lot of, Black kids will wear at college. But, we thought it was just a funny idea for a song. And then literally the week that it was coming out, because we're on Mad Decent, which is Diplo's label, the week that it was coming out was the same week that like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are wearing kente cloth, in honor of George Floyd. And so people thought that we had come up with that song within like 3 or 4 hours. Like they were just like, I can't believe you guys are a ragtag team of comedians, huh? And I'm like, guys, this thing was written and shot in January. It's just, but I feel like the world is coming around to opening its eyes to some things that have been hiding in plain sight, I'll say. And I think, again, you just gotta look around, man.
I really have enjoyed, we run into each other a couple times at events, and you've always been so nice to me and so like complimentary of At Midnight. And it really means a lot to me because I'm a fan of your work, and I have so much respect for what you do. And it always makes me feel good because even if you were just nice to me, it would make me feel good. But the fact that you like the show that like the shows that I've worked on, it really means a lot to me. And I've enjoyed our text back and forths, and I really, really appreciate getting to know you. And I really just, I don't know. I would hope that we would get to do something together.
I would hope that we would actually be able to get together in person one time. Cause it's
oh my God.
Like that would be awesome. No, I think it's all really cool, man. I'm a fan going back, to the Meltdown days. And, I'm just, I really want to see what comes next. And hopefully we can find something that we can work on together. Cause I think we have a lot of the same touchstones, and I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Well, that's one of the fun things I love about this kind of journey through comedy is that when you meet people that you really connect with, maybe this is a getting older thing, but you really understand how precious that is and how special that is because, it doesn't, like comics can sort of dogpile jokes on top of one another all day long. But when you meet someone else that like, oh, we understand all the same references and we get a lot of the same, I don't know. It feels like,
that's how you build your room. That's how you build your room. You find the people who you like talking to for hours and hours about movies, comics, TV, and all that stuff. And then out of those conversations comes something really pleasant, because if it can make a room of the right 8 to 10 people laugh, trust me, there are other people out there who are laughing to it. I always say my formative years of thinking like, oh, TV, maybe I could do that one day. I feel like it started with the show Moonlighting, but like everything that I've tried to do in my career, I equate more to the work of like Joss Whedon, who I feel like he tries to invest every single scene with some level of Easter egg or fan service, or just, it's almost like his love letter to humanity, because right. And I feel like that's what we've always tried to do. We've always tried to do something that, if I'll put it like this, if we weren't writing TV shows, I would be writing fan fiction using other people's characters. You know what I mean? Like, and by the way, I did waste many a time in college adding to the canon of the Star Wars expanded universe, and now none of that stuff is canon, and all my labor has amounted to nothing. But I do hope that one day we get to work on something together. That'd be a lot of fun.
Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to talk about, promote, anything?
I think, I'll just say real quick, Sherman Showcase, the Black History Month Spectacular is coming on AMC this Friday night at 10 p.m. And then there's actually a marathon of season 1 on IFC. It starts at 8 p.m. and then it ends at 11 p.m. with a second airing of the Sherman Showcase Spectacular. We just finished work on this John Legend Father's Day special, which I think is going to be really funny. That's on ABC on Father's Day this Sunday. And then separately, I did a short with Tracy Morgan for the ESPYs, and that'll be airing on Sunday as well. And I think you'll appreciate this. I play a long lost cousin of Hank Williams Jr. named Tank Williams, and I sing a very cool song about the state of sports, and I won't cheat it any more than that.
Is there and just also musically, is there anything else that you're probably writing a lot of songs for the shows that you're working on?
I had a lot of songs for Sherman Showcase season 1 soundtrack is out on Mad Decent. Shout out to Mad Decent. I've really had more fun than working with them on these soundtracks. There's also a separate soundtrack for just the Black History Month Spectacular, and I actually think that's the killer soundtrack because we've got house music, we've got Jamaican dance hall, we've got some trap. We've got a little bit of everything for everybody on that soundtrack, and I've really enjoyed. Bashir and I met in an acapella group, so music's been a part of our since the beginning. Yeah, I know. You're thinking we're way too cool for acapella.
No, I fucking love acapella groups. Are you kidding me?
I think they're so nerdy. I'm so ashamed of myself. But yeah, we were an acapella group. We splintered off our previous acapella group and formed our group with a couple other friends and called it Brothers. And we were there to sing secular songs like Jodeci and Silk and Shy and a bunch of 90s R&B. Each one of us thought we were Usher Raymond. So those were my college years in Boston.
I unironically love a cappella groups. Like when I was in college, I had a Take 6 CD that I listened to over and over and over and tried to map out all the harmonies.
Wow.
But I just wasn't, I'm not great. That's when I realized that that's not something I'm great at but just the interweaving of voices to where every voice has a very specific point in space to very perfectly complement a group of other voices at that point in space and then zigzag around. To me, it's right. I can almost see it.
The guy who was the sort of leader of our group, Sheldon, he was amazing in terms of because sometimes them harmonies are so hard to find, and you're just like, you really want me to sing that note? That's really going to sound good with all those other notes in there. And that was, I feel like that takes a whole talent set that I don't understand, but the harmonies were magical. And that I'm so happy that I got into acapella before it became the Pitch Perfect movies came out, you know what I mean? Because now I feel like there are all these people, there's so much more theatrics in acapella now. When we were doing acapella, it was a lot more of this, and the Crocodillos were at Harvard, and the Wiffle Poofs were at I think that's what they're called. That was the big Yale group. The Din and Tonics. There was always some witty name for the group. That was always a whole nother thing that you had to come up with.
That was a whole other layer that you had to, it had to be some sort of a weird thing. But I've always found it very difficult to listen to someone else singing and not start to veer into their, into their lane. So it's like you have to listen, but then block off the part of your brain that wants to follow and stick to, I'm supposed to go down here and then up there. And then I've always had a hard time.
We always did 4-part harmony. They're obviously as many parts as people nowadays, but 4-part harmony is always good because even if you wanted to go up there, you probably don't want to go up there. Right. You'd always I was an alto. I'm pretty sure as long as I didn't slip up into tenor or something like that or soprano, I was okay. But those are fun times. It was always fun to get in front of people and perform. And if you had a coffee shop, we probably sang at your coffee. We were down to sing pretty much anywhere.
Well, it's really good to see you. I'm glad that we got to see each other, at least even via Zoom. And hopefully one of these days when, I guess people can technically go out and do stuff now, but it still feels like it's not allowed. You know what I mean? It still feels like,
I agree with you, man.
A trick? Are you sure? Really?
I'm with you. Trust me. I see people on their IG stories like, I'm out. I'm not scared of anything. Doing my thing. I'm like, oh God, this does not look. It doesn't even look fun to me. I think what's interesting are the things that I don't even miss. Like to a certain extent, I don't miss driving to work. Like most of what I do for a living, like I can do here, except for going for the cameras or something like that. So, I don't miss a whole lot. Do you miss a lot of stuff? I mean, like I miss seeing people, but I don't miss going to restaurants all the time. You miss what?
I miss two things. I would go to a cafe every morning and write. That was part of my writing ritual.
Okay,
I've barely written anything since I've been at home because I'm just not in my ritual.
It's hard to compartmentalize, yeah.
Yeah, and two, I miss doing stand up. I just miss live performance. But outside of that, my wife Lydia and I are like total homebodies, and when they're like, don't go anywhere, we're like, no problem. You got it. How long? And so you're right, like we had a pitch meeting at AMC and we did it all yesterday, and we did it all via video conferencing. And I thought about the 3 hours that I wasn't in my car driving back and forth to Santa Monica in rush hour traffic.
Exactly.
And then going, and it's better for the environment, so I don't know. Yeah. So I do think that the new normal will be some common, because I said to the AMC people, like, is there a reason to ever go back into offices? And they're like, well, it's, like socializing, being around people. I go, yes. But I wonder if moving forward, it'll be the balance of you can go in, but you don't have to all the time. And we can still economize our time and streamline some things and protect the environment. And I feel like there'll be a balance of those two things of going in someplace, but then also a percentage of the time. Now we realize like, oh, you don't really have to.
No, you really don't. When executives would drive from like Burbank all the way to your studio in Santa Monica and do stuff like that, like I feel like that's not needed anymore.
Yeah, that you're not going to be able to. Not to turn into a Californian sketch, but the Valley people will probably, from this point forward, literally never go to Santa Monica again. Never. They're like, no, we don't have to. We have the technology now. There's no reason for me to do that.
That's why, I do kind of miss those things with those confabs where I'd see you and I'd see all the Dead Stars and because I remember in the early days of Walking Dead, they would fly you out to New York to do these it was probably for upfronts. Yeah. And so I just remember being at this event, and even at the time, I never took it for granted. And they had this space, and it was like, I was there, and Norman was there, and Steve Yeun was there, but then also Aaron Paul, because Breaking Bad, it was Breaking Bad too. Yeah. And they had this whole so they would do the upfronts, and then they had this whole walkthrough where it was like, here's a Walking Dead set. And then they had people, they had these people making, blue meth in another room. And it was just such a fun, it was just like, It was like a mini Comic-Con sort of, but at a place that you worked at. I don't know. It was really fun. When we were at HBO, I feel like Game of Thrones was in its prime. And I'll never forget, they took over the entire Roosevelt Hotel.
Oh, wow.
We walked in and it was like they had archery. They had these things you could put in your mouth and blow smoke out like a dragon. There was so much money in just the Game of Thrones parties alone. It was just insane. And I miss a good party, man. My birthday is coming up in 14 days or something like that. And I don't know. What am I going to do? Just hang out at the house probably.
Zoom party.
So personal invite, Chris. Yeah. One. Friday night after the second airing goes off at 9 p.m. Pacific time. Midnight out there, but I am going to have a Zoom party, and my Zoom parties have been real. This is not me inviting you to my DJ gig, but my Zoom parties have been, they've been 50 people, really fun. You can come for 2 minutes. You can come for 2 hours, whatever. But I would like to send you the invite so that you
I would love it. I would love it.
There've been some really fun Nigel Lithgow, Lil Jon, who I think you might know from because I've seen him on the couch a few times, and Marlon Wayans, and just like really fun people in the Zoom. So if you're not doing it at 9 p.m. on Friday, you should come through the Zoom.
I would absolutely love that. I would love that. And I kind of want to end with just I'm just curious because we're talking about like you're talking about your HBO experience at the Roosevelt, and I was talking about AMC and stuff. For you, how do you feel like you've made it? How do you know that you've made it? Because I guess when I look back at those moments, did I recognize like, oh, I think I'm doing the thing that I set out to do? Like, do you recognize it when it's happening? Or do you feel like a lot of times it's retrospective? Like when you look back and you go, oh my God, actually that was a really cool thing. Did I recognize that at the time? Did I appreciate that at the time? So how do you know, like, how do you define, like how do you define making it in your head?
You know, it's interesting. This is probably not something I should be so honest about, but I don't feel like I've made it. I often tell my wife, like, when will I feel like I've accomplished anything in life? Like, I just feel like I have not really accomplished. This is not me being coy. I don't feel like I've accomplished a whole lot yet. I do hope that at some point, you know, like I'll have enough money to never worry about money again, and also create something that is such a cultural touchstone that I feel like, oh yeah, I really did something there. That was really cool, and people definitely noticed, and it pushed the needle in this direction. I mean, to a certain extent, I feel like I have that with Sherman's and Southside, but I don't know. There's something, you know. I'm not saying that I need the Aaron Spelling 112, room mansion and like 40, for how many TV shows he did? Like something like 205 TV shows over the course of his career. I don't need Dick Wolf, levels of residuals coming every month, but I do kind of want a point in my life to just feel like, I have pushed the culture and I'm feeling creatively fulfilled, and, I can have a pool. There's no pool at our house. And that's being really blunt, because I think one thing that we were talking about earlier, like in 1976, if you had a show on the air, that was good. Nowadays, TV shows get 6 episodes, 8 episodes. They air, maybe, 500,000 people tuned in to the number 1 episode in that season. And then you're just like sort of back to looking around to see what's new on the landscape. I would love to have the impact that Issa Rae has had with Insecure. To me, that might be, what I consider success. Kenya Barris has had success. Shonda Rhimes has had success. I know I've named 3 black showrunners, but, I really do look up to, all types of people who've worked in this industry. And hopefully at some point it'll feel real. But I totally know what you mean. I think they're probably, and by the way, to me, you've made it. But I'm sure there have been times when you said, have I made it? And I think that's maybe just something that we all deal with. I don't know.
I think sometimes it's retrospective because when you're in the moment, you're caught up in the momentum and you're trying so hard to keep all the plates spinning and to maintain and to not, not drop it.
Yeah.
And so it can be hard to live in the present, and it really, the appreciation stuff, I think, is all about living in the present. And so a lot of times you look back retrospectively and go, oh yeah, that thing was actually pretty cool. We did that. And so I just hope that, in my mind, you have made it. And also, that I hope that, if whatever that metric is in your head of like, finally, okay, I have this thing, or I feel like I've moved the needle in this direction and I have, the pool or whatever, that I hope that you're not so conditioned to not see it that you don't see, you know what I mean? Like, I hope you see it because you are making really great, original, groundbreaking comedy and television. And you do so many different things that, it just, I don't know, maybe some people need that kind of fire. Like they need to feel like they've never quite made it to stay motivated. I don't know. But I do hope that you're able to, take those moments and go, oh shit, actually, yeah, two shows, I don't know. It's, you're doing a lot of really fucking cool stuff. So
I appreciate that. And you know what? I'm glad that we've had this conversation, because I think if I have a more clear idea of what I'd actually like to do, then maybe I can have a better idea of how to get there. You know, because I feel like, you know, this conversation has left me a changed man, in the sense that I'm not even kidding. I'm like, you know what? That is a very good point, Chris. And you know what? I need to spend some time thinking about that. I really do.
Well, I appreciate that. And I also have been changed by I really can't wait to go back and look at the jokes that I've been writing and saying, what am I seeing and what is the truth of this? Like, I'm going to burn those 2 questions I'm going to pin them to the top of my comedy notes list, because I just think it's such a great foundation when you think about writing comedy rather than jokes for joke's sake. Like, well, what is this about and what's the truth of it? So I thank you for.
Dude, I can't wait to talk to you again, man. This has been awesome.
Good to see you. Good luck with the special this week, and hopefully I'll see you at the Zoom get together.
The Zoom party. We call it I forget what we call it, but it's a fun time. So I'll definitely send you the information.
Cool. Thanks, Diallo. It's good to see you, man.
Take care. Take care, Katie.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
See ya.
ID10T scanning complete. Enjoy your burrito.